I was sitting quietly with my 5-year-old grandson at my son's second wedding when he suddenly gripped my hand and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave now." I asked what was wrong, and he replied, trembling, "Haven't you looked under the table?" The words sent ice through my veins. Around us, the Fontainebleau ballroom sparkled like a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across 200 wedding guests, all celebrating my son Daniel's marriage to his new bride, Bella. Jazz music floated through the air while servers glided between tables with champagne and canapes. But my grandson was trembling. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I whispered, bending down to his level at table 8. Noah pointed beneath our table with a shaking finger. "There's a scary paper down there, Grandma. It fell from the waiter's pocket." My heart hammered as I reached under the white linen tablecloth, my fingers searching until they found it. A folded piece of expensive wedding stationery tucked against the table's base. The paper felt heavy in my hands as I pulled it up, trying to appear casual while my world tilted on its axis. "I'm so happy you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has traveled." I unfolded it with trembling fingers. Table 8, add shrimp to the child serving. The ballroom sounds faded to a distant hum. My vision blurred because I knew something that turned this simple note into a death sentence written in elegant script. Noah was deathly allergic to shrimp. One bite would kill him, not just make him sick, kill him. His throat would swell shut within minutes. His little body would convulse as it went into shock. And here we were, 40 minutes from the nearest hospital through Miami's evening traffic, surrounded by 200 celebrating guests who had no idea they were witnessing a murder plot. Someone at my son's wedding wanted my grandson dead. I forced my face into a calm mask, though every instinct screamed at me to grab Noah and run. But where? And who could I trust when I didn't know which smiling face belonged to a killer? "It's okay, baby," I whispered to Noah, slipping the note into my small beaded purse. "Grandma's here." But nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. From across the ballroom, I watched my son Daniel laugh at something his new bride whispered in his ear. He looked so happy, so completely unaware that someone among his wedding guests was planning to murder his child. His only child, the precious boy who was all that remained of his first wife, my beloved Sophie. My eyes swept the elegant ballroom, studying faces I thought I knew, the bridesmaids in their soft pink gowns, the groomsmen adjusting their bow ties, Daniel's colleagues from his law firm, Bella's family from California, all smiles and designer dresses. Which one of them wanted Noah dead? A young waiter approached our table, carrying a covered silver plate. His name tag read Mark, and his hands shook slightly as he set the dish in front of Noah. "Special order for the young gentleman," he said with a nervous smile. My blood turned to Arctic water. "What's under there?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. "Honey garlic chicken with—" Mark lifted the silver dome, steam rising to reveal golden chicken strips garnished with pink, glistening shrimp. "With special shrimp just for him. A lady from the wedding party called it in personally." Noah wrinkled his nose. "I don't like shrimp, Grandma, thank God my grandson's natural instincts were protecting him." "Who ordered this?" I demanded, standing so quickly my chair scraped against the marble floor. Mark stepped back, confused by my intensity. "A woman from the bridal party, ma'am. She said the little boy specifically requested it. She knew about his favorite honey garlic sauce and everything." My gaze shot to the head table where Bella sat in her flowing white gown, surrounded by her bridesmaids. As if sensing my stare, she looked up and caught my eye. For just a moment, barely a heartbeat, her perfect smile faltered. Then she raised her champagne flute in my direction, that radiant bride's smile returning full force. But I saw it, the calculation, the cold assessment in those green eyes. My new daughter-in-law had just tried to murder my grandson at her own wedding. "Take it away," I told Mark, my voice deadly calm. "Ma'am, take it away." Mark quickly covered the plate and hurried toward the kitchen. Across the room, I watched Bella's smile freeze as she tracked the waiter's retreat. Her fingers tightened around her champagne glass. She'd been watching, waiting to see Noah take that first fatal bite. "Chloe," I whispered urgently to my adopted daughter, who sat beside me in her navy blue dress, her auburn hair gleaming under the chandeliers. "What's wrong, Mom?" Chloe's brown eyes filled with concern. Take Noah to the restroom. Right now. Don't let him eat or drink anything until I say it's safe." Something in my tone must have conveyed the urgency. Chloe immediately stood and took Noah's hand. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go wash up before dessert." As they walked away, Noah looked back at me with those intelligent dark eyes, so much like his mother's. He was scared but trusting. He believed his grandmother would protect him, and I would, even if it meant destroying this beautiful wedding, even if it meant exposing a killer in front of 200 guests, even if it meant shattering my son's happiness on what was supposed to be the most joyous day of his life. Because that little boy was worth more than any social convention, any family harmony, any polite silence. Bella excused herself from the head table, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she glided toward me. Her wedding dress rustled like whispered threats. Up close, her beauty was flawless. Porcelain skin, perfect makeup, not a hair out of place. But I was seeing her clearly for the first time. This was a woman who could smile while planning a child's murder. "Clara, darling," she said sweetly, her voice like honey over broken glass. "Is everything all right?" I noticed some confusion with Noah's dinner. I looked up at my son's new wife, this creature who had just attempted to poison my grandson, and I felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. Not just anger, not just horror, purpose. "Everything's fine, dear," I said, matching her saccharine tone. "Just fine." But as Bella returned to the head table, her white gown trailing behind her like a ghost, she had no idea what she'd just unleashed. She thought she was dealing with a harmless old grandmother, someone who could be fooled, manipulated, or frightened into silence. She was wrong. I'd spent 7 decades learning that the most dangerous enemies are the ones who underestimate you. And as I sat in that glittering ballroom, surrounded by celebrating guests who had no idea they'd just witnessed an attempted murder, I began planning my revenge. Because when someone tries to kill your grandchild at a wedding, you don't just stop them, you destroy them. Subscribe to our channel, because what I did next will shock you to your core. But first, I had to gather my evidence. I had to be absolutely certain, because when you accuse someone of attempted murder in front of 200 witnesses, you better be prepared to prove it. And I was about to prove that Bella had made the biggest mistake of her perfectly planned life. She'd chosen the wrong family to betray. To understand how someone could try to murder my grandson at his father's wedding, I need to tell you about Sophie, the woman who should have been sitting beside me at that table. The mother who would have died protecting Noah from what I'd just discovered. Sophie Martinez was everything I could have wanted in a daughter-in-law, and more than I ever dared hope for when Daniel brought her home 6 years ago. She had this way of lighting up a room just by walking into it, not because she was loud or demanding attention, but because genuine kindness radiates from some people like warmth from a fireplace. I remember the first Sunday dinner when she insisted on helping me in the kitchen, rolling up her sleeves to wash dishes while Daniel and his father watched football. Most young women would have sat politely making conversation, but Sophie saw the work that needed doing and simply did it. "Mrs. Chen," she said, soap suds up to her elbows, "tell me about Daniel when he was little. I want to know everything." And I did tell her everything, about his scraped knees and bedtime stories, his fear of thunderstorms, and his dream of becoming a lawyer like his grandfather. Sophie listened with such genuine interest, asking questions that showed she truly cared about understanding the man she loved. When they married 2 years later, I gained more than a daughter-in-law. I gained a daughter of the heart. Sophie had grown up in foster care, bounced between homes, never knowing the security of unconditional love. Maybe that's why she treasured family so fiercely. Every holiday, every birthday, every random Tuesday dinner became precious to her. She'd arrive early to help cook, stay late to play board games, and send handwritten thank you notes for the smallest kindnesses. "I never had a real family before," she told me once, tears in her dark eyes. "Thank you for making me belong." When Noah was born, Sophie became the mother she'd never had. Not the stressed, overwhelmed kind you see so often, but the patient, nurturing kind who makes motherhood look like the most natural thing in the world. She'd sit for hours reading him stories, her voice doing different characters until Noah giggled with delight. I'd watch them together in my garden, Sophie teaching 3-year-old Noah the names of flowers, letting him help water the roses even though he soaked himself more than the plants. Her laugh was music. His joy was infectious. Those were the golden days when our family felt complete and blessed and safe. Abuela Clara, Noah would call me, using the Spanish Sophie taught him. "Come see what Mom and I planted," and I'd hurry outside to admire whatever small miracle they'd created together. A row of sunflower seedlings, a butterfly garden, a fairy house made of twigs and leaves. Sophie made everything magical for that little boy. Daniel was the happiest I'd ever seen him during those years. He'd come home from his law office with stories about difficult cases and demanding clients, but the moment he saw Sophie and Noah, all that stress melted away. She was his anchor, his peace, his reason for everything. Which is why the accident destroyed him so completely. It was a Tuesday in October, one of those perfect Miami afternoons with clear blue skies and gentle ocean breezes. Sophie was driving to pick up Noah from daycare when a drunk driver ran a red light at the intersection of Coral Way and 37th Avenue. The paramedics said she died instantly. The drunk driver walked away without a scratch. I'll never forget the phone call. Daniel's voice, broken and hollow. "Mom, Sophie's gone. She's gone and I don't know how to breathe. Neither did any of us." The funeral was the darkest day of our family's life. 4-year-old Noah kept asking when Mama was coming home, and none of us had answers that made sense to a child's heart. Daniel could barely function. I'd find him sitting in Sophie's garden at all hours, staring at nothing, unreachable in his grief. That's when Chloe stepped up in ways that still take my breath away. My adopted daughter had always been special. I'd taken her in when she was 16 and aging out of the foster system, just like Sophie had been. But watching Chloe with Noah after we lost Sophie showed me the depth of love that exists in chosen families. She moved back home to help us, sleeping on the couch so she could be there when Noah woke up crying for his mama. She learned to make his favorite pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. She sat through countless viewings of his favorite movies, never complaining when he needed the same comfort over and over. "Where's Mama?" Noah would ask, his little face confused and heartbroken. "Mama's watching over you from heaven," Chloe would say gently. "But I'm right here, and I love you so much." Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. Not because we forgot Sophie, we could never forget her, but because love finds a way to rebuild what grief tears down. Daniel started eating again. Noah started sleeping through the night. I watched my family piece itself back together, different than before but still whole. For 2 years it was just the 4 of us. Daniel buried himself in work, I tended my garden and worried about everyone. Chloe became Noah's primary caregiver, driving him to school and soccer practice, helping with homework, being the steady presence he needed. Noah called her Aunt Chloe but looked at her with the trusting eyes of a child who knows he's loved unconditionally. She was healing him, day by day, with the same patient devotion Sophie would have given. We thought we were safe. We thought the worst was behind us. That's when Daniel met Bella at his law firm's Christmas party, 18 months ago. She was everything Sophie wasn't. Polished where Sophie had been natural, calculating where Sophie had been spontaneous, cold where Sophie had been warm. But Daniel was still vulnerable, still aching for what he'd lost. And predators have a way of sensing weakness. Bella knew exactly what she was hunting. Bella was everything you'd want in a woman. Successful marketing executive, beautiful smile, perfect manners. She charmed everyone at Daniel's office, and when he brought her home to meet us, she seemed almost too good to be true. I should have trusted that instinct. She arrived for Sunday dinner carrying white orchids and wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, and her makeup looked professionally done despite Daniel claiming she'd spent the afternoon at the beach. "Mrs. Clara," she said with that radiant smile, extending the flowers, "Daniel has told me so much about you. These are for being kind enough to welcome me into your home." Her voice had this honey-sweet quality that made everything sound sincere. She hugged me just long enough to seem genuine without being overly familiar. The perfect balance. Too perfect. "Please, just call me Clara," I said, accepting the orchids. They were beautiful, expensive, and elegant, but something about receiving them felt calculated rather than thoughtful. Daniel beamed as he watched our interaction. "Mom, isn't she wonderful?" "Bella runs the entire Southeast marketing division for her company. She's brilliant." Bella laughed, a musical sound that somehow managed to be both modest and proud. Daniel exaggerates. "I just love what I do. Building brands, creating connections. It's all about understanding what people want and giving it to them." Those words would echo in my mind for months afterward. Dinner went smoothly. Bella complimented everything: my roast chicken, the table setting, even the old family photos on the mantel. She asked intelligent questions about Daniel's childhood, nodded sympathetically when I mentioned Sophie, and offered to help clear dishes with exactly the right amount of insistence when I initially declined. "She's lovely," Chloe whispered to me in the kitchen as we served dessert. I can see why Daniel's smitten. But I noticed things that bothered me, small details that felt wrong despite Bella's flawless performance. Like how she kept checking her phone during dinner, always apologizing sweetly but never actually putting it away. How she complimented my cooking but barely touched her plate. How her smile never quite reached her eyes when she thought no one was looking directly at her. And then there was Noah. My grandson had been excited all day about meeting Daddy's new friend. He'd helped me set the table, carefully arranging the napkins and asking if she'd like his favorite, chocolate chip cookies, for dessert. But the moment Bella walked through the door, Noah changed. He hid behind my legs when I tried to introduce them, something he'd never done before. When Bella knelt down to his level with that perfect smile, Noah pressed closer to me. "Hello, sweetheart," she said, her voice taking on that special tone adults use with children. "Your daddy has told me so many wonderful things about you." Noah said nothing, just stared at her with those dark, intelligent eyes. "He's usually very social," Daniel said, looking embarrassed. "Noah, say hello to Bella." "Hello?" Noah whispered, but he wouldn't look at her directly. Throughout dinner I watched Noah's behavior carefully. He kept glancing at Bella when he thought she wasn't looking, his little face troubled. When she laughed at Daniel's stories, Noah flinched slightly. When she reached across the table for the salt, passing close to his chair, he leaned away from her. Children have instincts adults spend years learning to ignore. "Noah seems a bit shy tonight," Bella observed sweetly. "It's probably hard meeting someone new, especially after losing his mother so young." Her tone was perfectly sympathetic, but something in the way she said losing his mother made my skin crawl, like she was already positioning herself as Sophie's replacement. After dinner, while Daniel showed Bella our family photo albums, I helped Noah get ready for bed. As I tucked him in, he grabbed my hand. "Grandma," he whispered, "I don't like her." "Why not, sweetheart?" "She smiles wrong, like the bad lady in my movie who pretends to be nice but isn't really, out of the mouths of babes." "What do you mean, honey?" "Her eyes don't smile when her mouth does, and she keeps looking at me funny when Daddy isn't watching." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "What kind of funny look? Like she doesn't want me here?" I kissed his forehead and told him everything was fine, but his words haunted me. While Daniel walked Bella to her car, I stood at Noah's bedroom window and watched them in the driveway below. Daniel was clearly infatuated, gesturing animatedly as he talked. But when he turned to unlock her car door, I saw Bella's face change. The sweet smile vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. She glanced up at the house, directly at Noah's window, and for just a moment, her expression was pure assessment. Like she was studying a problem she needed to solve. Then Daniel turned back, and the mask slipped seamlessly into place. Sweet smile, adoring eyes. The perfect girlfriend act resumed. Over the following weeks, Bella became a regular fixture in our lives. She accompanied Daniel to family dinners, holiday celebrations, and Noah's soccer games. She brought thoughtful gifts and remembered everyone's preferences. She laughed at all the right moments and asked all the right questions. But I was watching now, really watching. I noticed how she always positioned herself between Daniel and Noah during conversations, subtly redirecting attention when Noah tried to tell his father something. How she'd interrupt Noah's stories with her own anecdotes, always managing to make herself the center of attention. How she'd suggest activities that excluded Noah, adult restaurants, late movies, weekend trips. "Daniel works so hard," she'd say with concern. "He deserves some grown-up time to relax." The implication was clear: Noah was stress, not joy. A burden, not a blessing. Most insidiously, she began planting seeds of doubt about Noah's behavior. Casual comments delivered with worried concern. I noticed Noah seemed a bit defiant at dinner. "Is that normal for his age? Do you think he might need counseling? He seems to have some anger issues. I read that children from broken homes sometimes act out. Maybe he needs more structure." Daniel, still raw from grief and eager to build a new life, began questioning himself. Was he being too lenient? Was Noah struggling more than he realized? Maybe Bella's professional insights were exactly what they needed. I watched my son start doubting his parenting instincts, and I watched my grandson withdraw further into himself with each of Bella's visits. While I tried to convince myself I was being an overprotective grandmother, Noah's behavior was telling me a different story. Children, you see, have a way of sensing evil that adults often miss. But it wasn't just Noah's fear that should have warned me. There were other signs that someone was systematically planning to remove him from our family forever. I just didn't realize yet that the removal she had in mind was permanent. Over the months leading to the wedding, Noah changed. My happy, playful grandson became withdrawn and fearful. His teacher called with concerns, and every time Bella was around, it got worse. The first sign was the nightmares. Noah had slept peacefully for almost 2 years after Sophie's death. Chloe's patient care had finally healed those night terrors. But 3 weeks after meeting Bella, he started waking up screaming again. "The lady with yellow hair is trying to hurt me," he'd sob into my shoulder at 2 a.m. "She wants me to go away forever." "It's just a bad dream, sweetheart," I'd whisper, rocking him back to sleep. But his little body would tremble for hours afterward. Daniel dismissed it as normal childhood fears. "He's probably anxious about me dating again." The therapist said this might happen, but I knew the difference between adjustment anxiety and pure terror. Noah wasn't worried about sharing his father. He was genuinely afraid of Bella herself. The regression came next. My articulate 7-year-old started talking like a toddler when Bella was around, clinging to Chloe or me with desperate intensity. He'd wet the bed after spending weekends at Daniel's apartment when Bella stayed over. His appetite disappeared, and he'd pick at his food with the listless manner of a child who'd lost all joy. "Noah seems tired lately," his teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, mentioned when I picked him up from school. "Is everything all right at home?" I wanted to tell her about Bella, about the way Noah flinched whenever she walked into a room, about how my confident little boy had become a shadow of himself. Instead, I just said he was adjusting to his father's new relationship. But Mrs. Rodriguez called me at home 2 weeks later with real concern in her voice. "Clara, I need to talk to you about Noah's behavior. Can you come in for a conference?" I arrived at Pine Elementary the next morning to find Noah's artwork spread across Mrs. Rodriguez's desk, violent crayon drawings that made my blood run cold. In every picture, a small figure was being chased by a tall woman with yellow hair and angry red mouth. "He drew these during free time this week," Mrs. Rodriguez explained gently. When I asked him about them, he said the yellow-haired lady was trying to make him disappear so his daddy would forget about him. My heart clenched. Has he said anything else? Yesterday he asked me if stepmothers in real life are as mean as they are in movies. "Clara, I've taught for 15 years, and I've never seen a child regress this dramatically without cause." I stared at those disturbing drawings, my grandson's 7-year-old mind trying to process a threat he couldn't articulate. The yellow-haired figure loomed over the small boy in every scene, sometimes holding what looked like a bottle, sometimes just standing with arms outstretched like she was reaching for him. "Has anyone talked to his father about this?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked. "Daniel thinks it's normal adjustment issues." "Clara," she said quietly, "this isn't adjustment, this is fear." But Daniel was blind to it all, completely intoxicated by Bella's spell. When I tried showing him Noah's drawings, he barely glanced at them. "Kids draw weird stuff all the time, Mom. Remember when I drew dinosaurs eating our house? You didn't think I was traumatized by architecture. This is different, Daniel. You're being overprotective." Bella's wonderful with Noah. Just yesterday she offered to take him shopping for new school clothes. That shopping trip haunted me for weeks afterward. Noah came home with an entire new wardrobe, expensive clothes that fit perfectly but made him look uncomfortable. When I asked him about the trip, he just shrugged and went to his room. But Chloe pulled me aside that evening with worry creasing her brow. "Mom, Noah told me something strange. He said Bella made him try on clothes for 2 hours, but she kept saying things like, 'We need to make sure you look perfect for Daddy,' and little boys who don't appreciate gifts sometimes lose them." What kind of person says that to a 7-year-old? Did he say anything else? He said she kept asking weird questions about his food allergies, specifically about his shrimp allergy, how severe it is, what happens if he accidentally eats some, how quickly he'd need to get to a hospital. Ice water filled my veins. She asked about his allergies? Noah said she seemed really interested in the details. He thought it was strange, because she kept writing notes on her phone while he answered. That conversation should have sent me straight to Daniel with demands and ultimatums. Instead, I convinced myself there had to be an innocent explanation. Maybe Bella was just being thorough about Noah's medical needs. Maybe she wanted to be prepared in case of emergencies. Maybe I was being paranoid. But the incidents kept mounting. Like the day I arrived early to pick up Noah from Daniel's apartment and found Bella alone with him in the living room. Through the window, I could see her gripping Noah's wrist, her face inches from his, her mouth moving in what looked like harsh whispers. Noah was pressed against the couch cushions, his eyes wide with terror. The moment she heard my key in the door, Bella's demeanor shifted completely. By the time I walked in, she was sitting calmly on the opposite end of the couch, smiling serenely. "Clara, perfect timing. Noah and I were just having a little chat about respecting grown-ups." Noah wouldn't look at me. His wrist had red marks on it. "What kind of chat?" I asked carefully. "Oh, just reminding him that big boys who want to keep their daddies happy need to learn when to speak up and when to stay quiet. Isn't that right, Noah?" My grandson nodded mutely, his little body rigid with fear. Or the afternoon at the park when I watched from across the playground as Bella accidentally let go of Noah's swing at the peak of its arc. He went flying, landing hard on the mulch with a cry that brought every parent running. While I rushed to check if he was hurt, Bella stood calmly nearby. "Children need to learn to hold on tighter," she said with that sweet smile. "The world is full of dangerous surprises. Tell me, when you see a child afraid of their future stepmother, what would you do? Would you speak up or would you wait for proof?" I chose to wait for proof. I told myself I needed concrete evidence before I could accuse Daniel's fiancée of terrorizing his son. I convinced myself that surely my successful, intelligent son would see through any woman who meant his child harm. I was wrong on both counts. The engagement announcement came on a Tuesday in March. Daniel called me, breathless with excitement, to say Bella had said yes to his proposal at their favorite restaurant overlooking Biscayne Bay. "She's incredible, Mom. She's already talking about being a real mother to Noah, about giving him the stable family life he deserves." "And how does Noah feel about the engagement?" I asked carefully. "He's thrilled," Daniel lied. "Or maybe he'd convinced himself it was true. Bella's going to make us a real family again." But that night, when Noah stayed over at my house, he crawled into bed beside me at midnight, his small body shaking with sobs. "Grandma," he whispered, "she told me that after the wedding, things are going to be very different. She said I need to be ready for big changes." "What kind of changes, sweetheart?" "She said some little boys are too much trouble for their new families, and that daddies sometimes have to choose between their old life and their new life." My blood ran cold. Did she say anything else? She asked me again about my allergy. She wanted to know if I always carry my medicine and what would happen if I forgot it somewhere. She said accidents happen all the time to careless little boys. I held Noah tighter, my heart hammering with a fear I couldn't yet name. Because suddenly, all those innocent questions about his shrimp allergy didn't seem innocent anymore. Suddenly, they seemed like research. The wedding was scheduled for early June, just 3 months away. 3 months for Bella to finalize whatever plan was forming behind those calculating green eyes. I chose to wait for proof, but what I didn't know was that Bella had already decided that proof would never matter, because Noah wouldn't be alive to give it. It was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became a crime scene when my grandson whispered those haunting words, "Haven't you looked under the table?" The Fontainebleau ballroom sparkled around us like something from a fairy tale. 200 guests filled the elegant space, their laughter mixing with jazz music and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Candlelight danced across white tablecloths, while servers glided between tables carrying silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. My son Daniel looked radiant in his black tuxedo as he danced with his new bride. Bella's white gown flowed like liquid silk as they moved together, every eye in the room watching their perfect moment. She looked like a princess from one of Noah's storybooks, beautiful, graceful, everything a bride should be. But my 7-year-old grandson was trembling beside me at table 8. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I whispered, bending down to his level. Noah's dark eyes, so much like his mother Sophie's, were wide with a terror I'd never seen before. His little red toy car sat abandoned next to his untouched plate of chicken and vegetables. "There's something scary under the table, Grandma," he said, his voice barely audible above the celebration around us. I saw the waiter drop a paper, and when I looked at it, his small body shuddered. My heart began hammering as I reached beneath our table, my fingers searching the smooth pedestal base until they found it, a piece of folded stationery tucked against the underside, where only someone crawling around would discover it. The paper felt expensive, heavy, like the wedding invitations that had arrived months earlier. I pulled it up carefully, trying to appear casual while my world tilted on its axis. Around us, guests continued celebrating, completely unaware that something sinister was unfolding just feet away. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the note. Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving. The words hit me like a physical blow. The ballroom sounds faded to a distant hum. My vision blurred, because I knew something that turned this simple instruction into a death sentence written in elegant script. Noah was deathly allergic to shrimp, not just uncomfortable or sick. One bite would kill him, his throat would swell shut within minutes. His little body would convulse as it went into anaphylactic shock. And here we were, 40 minutes from the nearest hospital through Miami's Saturday evening traffic, surrounded by 200 celebrating guests who had no idea they were witnessing a murder plot. Someone at my son's wedding wanted my grandson dead. The realization crashed over me in waves of horror and disbelief. This wasn't some random accident or kitchen mistake. Someone had deliberately written this note. Someone knew about Noah's allergy. Someone had planned this moment with cold, calculated precision. Someone wanted to murder my grandson at his father's wedding. I forced my face into a mask of calm, though every nerve in my body screamed danger. Noah was watching me with those intelligent eyes, waiting for his grandmother to make everything safe again. I couldn't let him see my terror. "It's okay, baby," I whispered, slipping the note into my small beaded purse with hands that shook like autumn leaves. "Grandma's here." But nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. My mind raced with horrible possibilities. Who knew about Noah's allergy? The family, obviously, his teachers at school, his pediatrician. Anyone who'd spent significant time around him would know about the emergency medication he carried, the careful way we checked every food label, the constant vigilance required to keep him safe. The killer wasn't a stranger, the killer was someone we trusted. A waiter approached our table carrying a covered silver plate. He looked young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and hands that trembled slightly as he set the dish in front of Noah. "Special order for the young gentleman," he said with an uncertain smile. His name tag read Mark, and sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the ballroom's perfect climate control. My blood turned to Arctic water. "What's under there?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Honey garlic chicken strips," Mark said, lifting the silver dome. Steam rose to reveal golden brown chicken pieces garnished with glistening pink shrimp. With special shrimp, just as requested. A lady from the wedding party called it in personally, said the little boy specifically asked for it. The sight of those deadly pink crescents nestled among Noah's favorite chicken strips made my stomach lurch. Someone had taken my grandson's beloved meal and turned it into a weapon. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. "I don't like shrimp, Grandma," Noah said, wrinkling his nose at the plate. "Thank God. Thank God for his natural instincts, for the cautious way Sophie had taught him to avoid unfamiliar foods, for whatever guardian angel was watching over him in that moment." "Who ordered this?" I demanded, rising so quickly my chair scraped against the marble floor. Mark stepped back, clearly confused by my intensity. "A woman from the bridal party, ma'am. She knew all about his favorite foods, said he loved honey garlic sauce, and specifically requested the shrimp. She seemed to know him well." My gaze shot across the ballroom to the head table, where Bella sat in her flowing white gown, surrounded by her bridesmaids in soft pink dresses. As if sensing my stare, she looked up, and our eyes met across the crowded room. For just a heartbeat, barely a fraction of a second, her perfect bridal smile faltered. Then she raised her champagne flute in my direction, that radiant smile returning full force, playing the part of the happy bride toasting her new family. But I had seen it. The flash of calculation in those green eyes, the cold assessment of a predator whose trap had been discovered. My new daughter-in-law had just tried to murder my grandson at her own wedding. The full scope of her betrayal hit me like a tsunami. All those months of patient courting, of charming dinners and thoughtful gifts, of positioning herself as Noah's future mother, it had all been preparation for this moment. She hadn't been building a relationship with my grandson. She'd been studying him, learning his routines, his allergies, his vulnerabilities. She'd been planning his murder. "Take it away," I told Mark, my voice deadly calm. "Ma'am, take it away, now." Mark quickly covered the plate and hurried toward the kitchen, clearly sensing the danger in my tone even if he didn't understand it. Across the room, I watched Bella's smile freeze as she tracked the waiter's retreat with her eyes. Her fingers tightened around her champagne glass. She had been watching, waiting to see Noah take that first fatal bite. "Chloe," I whispered urgently to my adopted daughter, who sat beside me looking elegant in her navy blue dress. "What's wrong, Mom?" Chloe's brown eyes filled with immediate concern. "Take Noah to the restroom. Right now. Don't let him eat or drink anything until I say it's safe." Something in my tone must have conveyed the life-or-death urgency. Chloe stood immediately, taking Noah's hand without question. "Come on, sweetheart," she said gently. "Let's go wash up before dessert." As they walked away, Noah looked back at me over his shoulder. Those dark eyes held fear but also trust, absolute faith that his grandmother would protect him from whatever danger he sensed but couldn't understand, and I would protect him, even if it meant destroying this beautiful wedding, even if it meant exposing a killer in front of 200 guests, even if it meant shattering my son's happiness on what was supposed to be the most joyous day of his life, because that little boy was worth more than any social convention, any family harmony, any polite silence. My hands shook as I pulled the note from my purse and read it again. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child, serving 7 words that would have ended Noah's life if not for a waiter's clumsy fingers and a child's sharp eyes. But then came the phone call that changed everything. I fumbled for my cell phone with trembling fingers, my mind racing through possibilities. Who could I trust? Who would believe me? The police would need evidence, witnesses, proof beyond a single note that could have been written by anyone. But I knew who had written it. I knew who wanted Noah dead. And suddenly, sitting in that glittering ballroom surrounded by celebrating guests, I realized I had been gathering evidence for months without even knowing it. Every strange conversation, every threatening comment disguised as concern, every moment when Bella's mask had slipped and I glimpsed the calculating predator beneath. I had been documenting her behavior instinctively, a grandmother's protective instincts recording every red flag even when my conscious mind made excuses. Now those instincts were about to save Noah's life. I dialed hotel security first, my voice steady despite the terror coursing through my veins. "This is Clara in the Fontainebleau ballroom. I need to report an attempted poisoning. A child's life is in danger." Then I called my lawyer, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Martin, I'm at Daniel's wedding and someone just tried to murder Noah. I need you here now." Finally, I took a deep breath and made the call I'd been avoiding for months, the one to my son. "Daniel," I said when he answered, breathless from dancing, "I need you to come to table 8 immediately. Don't bring Bella. Come alone. Mom, what's wrong?" "I'm in the middle of my first dance. Someone just tried to poison your son. If you want him to live to see tomorrow, you'll get over here now." The line went silent except for the sound of Daniel's sharp intake of breath. I hung up and looked across the ballroom at Bella, who was... They thought they were so clever, planning to murder a child at his father's wedding. But they made one mistake. They underestimated a grandmother's love and determination. I found Mark in the hotel's service corridor, his face pale as paper as he loaded dirty dishes onto a cart. His hands shook as he stacked plates, and when he saw me approaching, he nearly dropped an entire tray of champagne glasses. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" he asked nervously. "Was there something wrong with the special order?" "Mark," I said, my voice calm but commanding, "I need you to tell me exactly who gave you that note about adding shrimp to my grandson's meal." His eyes went wide. "Note? What note?" I pulled the folded paper from my purse and held it up. Mark's face went from pale to ashen gray. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. "You dropped it under table 8. My grandson found it. Now tell me, who gave this to you?" Mark's hands trembled as he set down the dishes. I can't get in trouble. I need this job. My mom's in the hospital and—" "Mark," I interrupted gently but firmly, "a child's life is at stake. This note was instructions to poison my 7-year-old grandson. He could have died." "Poisoned?" Mark's voice cracked. "No, that's not. She said it was just a special request. She said the little boy loved shrimp, and it would be a nice surprise for him. Who said that? The lady from the wedding party. She was really pretty, blonde hair, wearing one of those pink bridesmaid dresses. She came to the kitchen during cocktail hour and handed me the note. Said she was the boy's new aunt and wanted to make his night special. My blood ran cold. Did you see her face clearly? Yeah, she was real friendly. Tipped me $50 cash just for passing along the request to the kitchen. Said it was important that Table 8 got the special meal, that the family had been planning this surprise for weeks. A $50 tip for a simple food request. Bella hadn't just planned Noah's murder, she'd paid for it. Mark, this is very important. Did anyone else see her give you that note? I don't think so. It was real busy during cocktail hour, everyone running around getting ready for dinner service. She pulled me aside by the ice machine, said she wanted to keep it secret until the surprise. And you're absolutely certain she was wearing a pink bridesmaid dress? Mark nodded vigorously. Definitely one of the wedding party ladies. She knew all about the kid, his name, his favorite foods, even which table he was sitting at. She seemed like family. But Bella had been wearing white, not pink, which meant she'd used someone else to deliver the death sentence, someone who thought they were helping arrange a special treat for a child, someone who had no idea they were participating in murder. Mark, I need you to look at the wedding party and tell me which woman gave you that note. Can you do that? His face went even paler. Am I in trouble? I swear I didn't know anything about poisoning. I would never hurt a kid. You're not in trouble, but you need to help me identify who is responsible. Are you willing to do that? Mark nodded reluctantly, and we made our way back toward the ballroom. I could hear the jazz quartet playing while guests enjoyed their main course, completely unaware that a murder plot had just been thwarted. Standing in the doorway, I scanned the wedding party at the head table. 5 bridesmaids in soft pink dresses sat laughing and chatting, their faces glowing with happiness. They looked like angels, young, beautiful women celebrating their friend's special day. One of them was an accessory to attempted murder. There, Mark whispered, pointing toward the head table. That's her, the one on the end, next to the bride. I followed his gaze to a young woman with auburn hair and delicate features. She looked barely 20, with the kind of innocent face that belonged in a college sorority, not a murder conspiracy. You're certain? Positive. That's definitely the lady who gave me the note. My heart sank as I recognized her. Amelia, Bella's younger sister, the sweet girl who'd helped address wedding invitations, who'd giggled nervously during the rehearsal dinner, who'd seemed so excited to be part of her big sister's wedding. Bella hadn't just planned Noah's murder, she'd manipulated her own baby sister into helping her carry it out. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Using an innocent girl as an unwitting accomplice, letting Amelia believe she was doing something kind while actually making her complicit in the death of a child. Mark, I need you to stay close. You may need to repeat what you just told me. He nodded nervously, and I began walking back toward Table 8, my mind racing with the implications. Bella was even more calculating than I'd realized. She'd created the perfect cover. If anyone questioned the shrimp request, it would trace back to her sister, not her. Amelia would be the one facing consequences while Bella played the grieving stepmother devastated by the tragic accident at her own wedding. Except it wasn't going to be an accident. Because Noah was safe, and I was about to expose every detail of her plan. Daniel was waiting at our table when I returned, his face tight with worry and confusion. He still wore his tuxedo from the first dance, but his bow tie was loosened and his hair disheveled. Mom, what's this about someone trying to poison Noah? That's impossible. Everyone here loves him. I handed him the note without a word. Daniel read it once, twice, his face going from confusion to horror as the implications sank in. This can't be real. Mark, the waiter, confirms that one of Bella's bridesmaids gave him this note with specific instructions to add shrimp to Noah's meal. Your son could be dead right now if he hadn't found this paper. But why would anyone? Daniel's voice trailed off as he stared at the deadly words. The question isn't who would do this, Daniel. The question is who knew enough about Noah's allergy to use it as a weapon. I watched the terrible understanding dawn in my son's eyes. The guest list for people who knew about Noah's severe shrimp allergy was very short. Family members, close friends, teachers, his pediatrician, and his father's new wife. No, Daniel whispered, shaking his head. Bella would never. She loves Noah. She's going to be his stepmother. Is she? I asked quietly. Or was she planning to be his widow's stepmother? The color drained from Daniel's face. Around us, the wedding celebration continued in blissful ignorance, guests laughing over dinner, the jazz quartet playing soft melodies, servers refilling wine glasses. But at table 8, the truth was finally emerging from the shadows where it had been hiding for months. What they didn't know was that I had already prepared for this moment. You see, I've been documenting Bella's behavior for months. Every strange comment, every veiled threat, every moment when her mask slipped and I glimpsed the predator beneath. I'd been building a case without even realizing it, guided by a grandmother's instincts that something was deeply wrong with the woman my son planned to marry. Daniel, I said gently, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This isn't an isolated incident. This is the culmination of months of psychological abuse and manipulation. I have evidence. What kind of evidence? I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd been taking. Pictures of Noah's disturbing artwork, screenshots of threatening text messages Bella thought she'd deleted, recordings of conversations where she'd made subtle threats disguised as concern. You've been spying on my fiancé? Daniel's voice was shocked. I've been protecting my grandson. And thank God I did, because without this evidence, you'd be planning a funeral right now instead of confronting the truth. Daniel stared at the phone screen, scrolling through months of documented abuse. His face cycled through emotions: disbelief, anger, horror, and finally, a terrible understanding. She really tried to kill him, he whispered. She didn't just try, Daniel. She succeeded in every way except the actual death. Look at what she's done to that little boy over the past months. The nightmares, the regression, the fear. She's been torturing him psychologically while planning his physical elimination. I could see my son's world crumbling as the truth sank in. The woman he'd planned to build a life with, the person he'd trusted with his child's welfare, was a calculating predator who'd been playing a long game with his family's lives as the stakes. But before I could reveal my evidence, I decided to give the killer one chance to confess. What happened next would shock every guest in that ballroom. I stood up in that elegant ballroom, silenced the jazz band, and announced to 200 wedding guests that someone among them had just tried to murder my grandson. The silence was deafening. The decision crystallized in my mind like ice forming on a winter pond, sudden, complete, irreversible. I wasn't going to handle this quietly. I wasn't going to protect anyone's feelings or preserve the sanctity of this beautiful celebration. Someone had tried to kill Noah, and they were going to answer for it in front of everyone. I walked to the center of the ballroom, my heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots in a cathedral. The jazz quartet was in the middle of a soft melody when I approached their small stage. "Excuse me," I said to the trumpet player, my voice carrying clearly across the room. "I need you to stop playing." Now, something in my tone, the steel beneath the polite words, made him lower his instrument immediately. The piano fell silent. The bass stopped its gentle humming. Within seconds, the only sound in the entire ballroom was the quiet murmur of confused conversations. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, my voice projecting to every corner of the elegant space, "I apologize for interrupting this beautiful celebration, but I have something urgent that needs to be addressed." 200 faces turned toward me, guests in their finest attire, wine glasses halfway to their lips, forks suspended over half-finished plates. The crystal chandeliers cast warm light across their expectant expressions, creating a surreal tableau of frozen celebration. At the head table, I could see Bella's face go white as fresh snow. "My name is Clara, and I'm the grandmother of the groom's 7-year-old son, Noah. 10 minutes ago, my grandson discovered something under our table that I need to share with all of you." I held up the folded note, making sure everyone could see it clearly. "This is a written instruction that was given to your hotel staff tonight. It reads, Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving." A murmur rippled through the crowd, confusion mixed with growing concern. People began glancing toward Table 8, where Chloe had returned with Noah and was holding his hand protectively. "Now that might sound like a simple special request," I continued, my voice steady and clear, "except for one critical fact that makes this note a death sentence. My grandson Noah is deathly allergic to shrimp. One bite would have killed him within minutes." The murmur became a gasp, then stunned silence. You could hear champagne bubbles fizzing in untouched glasses. Someone at this wedding, someone celebrating with us tonight, deliberately tried to poison a 7-year-old child at his father's wedding. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Faces that had been flushed with wine and happiness now showed shock, horror, and growing comprehension. This wasn't a wedding anymore, it was a crime scene. That's ridiculous. Bella's voice cut through the silence like a blade. She stood at the head table, her white gown pristine, her face a mask of indignant disbelief. This is absolutely ridiculous. Someone is clearly trying to ruin my wedding day with paranoid fantasies. Every eye in the room swung between us, the grandmother in her navy blue dress holding a piece of paper, and the bride in flowing white claiming innocence. Is it paranoid? I ask calmly, when I have the waiter who received this note. Mark, would you please step forward? Mark emerged from the crowd of hotel staff near the kitchen doors, his face pale but determined. The poor boy looked terrified, but he walked to the center of the ballroom and stood beside me. Mark, I said gently, please tell our guests what happened during cocktail hour. A lady from the wedding party gave me a note, Mark said, his voice shaking but clear. She said it was a special request for the little boy at table 8. She paid me $50 to make sure the kitchen added shrimp to his chicken dinner. And did you recognize this lady? Mark's eyes swept the head table, stopping on Bella's sister Amelia. Yes, ma'am, it was her. He pointed directly at Amelia, who went white as her sister's dress. Amelia? Daniel's voice cracked as he stood up, staring at his new sister-in-law. You gave him the note? Amelia shook her head frantically, tears already streaming down her face. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it would hurt him. Bella told me it was just a special treat, that Noah loved shrimp and it would make him happy. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Every guest in that ballroom now understood what they were witnessing. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a kitchen error. This was a calculated murder plot that had used an innocent girl as an unwitting accomplice. Bella told you to give the waiter that note? I asked Amelia gently. Yes, Amelia sobbed. She said it was a surprise for the family, that Noah had specifically requested shrimp with his dinner. She gave me $50 to tip the waiter and told me to make sure he understood how important it was. That's a lie, Bella shrieked, her composure finally cracking. My sister is confused. She's been drinking too much. She doesn't know what she's saying. But it was too late. The truth was spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. Guests were pulling out their phones, some calling 911, others recording what was happening. The fairy tale wedding had become a nightmare, and everyone present knew they were witnessing something that would make headlines. Daniel, Bella pleaded, turning to my son with desperate eyes. You can't believe this insanity. I would never hurt Noah. I love him like my own son. Do you? I asked quietly, pulling out my phone. Because I have months of evidence that suggests otherwise. The power in the room had shifted completely. I was no longer just a grandmother sitting quietly at table 8. I was the prosecutor presenting a case to a jury of 200 witnesses. I have recordings of you telling Noah that some children are too much trouble for their new families. I have photos of bruises on his wrists after you spent time alone with him. I have documentation of his declining behavior at school, his nightmares, his regression, all coinciding with your increased presence in his life. I swiped through my phone, showing image after image of Noah's disturbing artwork, those crayon drawings of a yellow-haired woman chasing a small boy. I have his teacher's concerns about his behavioral changes. I have pediatric records showing his increasing anxiety. I have witness testimony about your accidents at the playground and your suspicious questions about his allergies. This is harassment, Bella screamed, but her voice sounded hysterical now, not righteous. This woman has been stalking me, building a case based on coincidences and paranoid delusions. Coincidences? I held up the note again. Is it a coincidence that someone who knew exactly which table Noah was sitting at, exactly what his favorite food was, and exactly what would kill him, arranged for shrimp to be added to his meal tonight? The guests were riveted, watching this confrontation unfold like a courtroom drama. But this wasn't entertainment. This was a family being torn apart by betrayal so deep it defied comprehension. You're all being manipulated by a bitter old woman who never wanted me to marry her son. Bella tried one last desperate play for sympathy. She's been trying to turn Daniel against me from the beginning. This is just her final attempt to destroy our happiness." But even as she spoke, I could see doubt creeping into the faces around us. Her explanations were becoming more frantic, less believable. The elegant bride was transforming before everyone's eyes into something desperate and cornered. "If I'm just a paranoid old woman," I said calmly, "then why don't we call hotel security and check the surveillance cameras from the service corridor during cocktail hour? Let's see who really gave that note to Mark." Bella's face went gray. "This is insane. I won't be subjected to this witch hunt at my own wedding." "Your wedding?" I asked. "Or your crime scene?" The room held its breath, waiting for her response. Bella tried to laugh it off, tried to make me look like a paranoid old woman. But then someone else in that room began to cry, and everything changed. You see, while Bella thought she was being so clever, I had been recording every suspicious conversation, documenting every cruel moment, and preparing for exactly this situation. They thought I was just a week-old grandmother. They were wrong. The recording of Bella's threats still echoed in the silent ballroom when I pulled up another file on my phone, this one a video I'd taken 3 days earlier through Daniel's kitchen window. "Let me show you what kind of stepmother Noah was about to get," I announced, holding up my phone so the nearby guests could see the screen. The video began playing, crystal clear despite being shot through glass. Bella was alone in the kitchen with Noah, gripping his small shoulders while she spoke directly into his face. With the phone's speaker on maximum volume, her voice carried clearly across the ballroom. "Little boys who tell lies about their new mommies sometimes have accidents," Bella's recorded voice said sweetly. "Very serious accidents. Do you understand what I'm saying, Noah?" The 7-year-old boy on the screen nodded mutely, tears streaming down his face. "Good. Because after the wedding, things are going to change dramatically. Your daddy is going to have a new family to think about, and some children discover they're not part of those plans." Gasps swept through the crowd as they watched Bella psychologically terrorizing a child. The elegant bride standing before them bore no resemblance to the monster on the screen. That was taken out of context," Bella shrieked, but her voice cracked with desperation. "Context?" I swiped to the next video. "How about this context?" This recording was from Noah's soccer game 2 weeks ago. Bella was sitting on the bleachers beside me, smiling and waving at Daniel, but her voice was barely audible as she leaned toward me. "You know, Clara, it's amazing how many childhood accidents happen around water. Pools, bathtubs, even shallow streams. 7-year-olds are so impulsive, so reckless. One moment of inattention from a babysitter and tragedy strikes." On the video, you could see me stiffening, pulling away from her, but Bella continued in that same sweet, conversational tone. Of course, Daniel would be devastated if anything happened to Noah. He'd need someone to help him through his grief, someone who understood that sometimes moving forward means letting go of painful reminders from the past. The ballroom erupted in horrified murmurs. This wasn't just attempted murder. This was months of psychological warfare designed to terrorize a child and isolate him from his family. "I have 17 more recordings," I announced, my voice cutting through the chaos. 17 separate instances of you threatening, intimidating, or planning harm against my grandson. Would you like me to play them all?" Bella's facade finally shattered completely. The beautiful bride vanished, replaced by something wild and cornered and dangerous. "You had no right to record me. Those are private conversations. This is illegal surveillance." "What's illegal," I said calmly, "is attempted murder. What's illegal is child abuse. What's illegal is conspiracy to commit homicide using your sister as an unwitting accomplice." I turned toward the hotel's security staff, who had been standing frozen near the kitchen doors. "I believe I requested hotel security earlier. Has anyone reviewed the surveillance footage from your service corridor during cocktail hour?" The head of security, a tall, professional-looking man in a dark suit, stepped forward with a tablet in his hands. "Yes, ma'am. We pulled the footage as soon as we received your call." He held up the tablet so the nearby guests could see the screen. "This shows the service corridor at 6:15 this evening. The security footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed Bella in her white wedding gown approaching Mark near the ice machine. You could see her pulling a folded piece of paper from her bouquet, handing it to the young waiter along with what appeared to be cash. The timestamp shows this occurring approximately 20 minutes before dinner service," the security chief continued. The subject in the wedding dress is clearly passing materials to the catering staff. "That's not me!" Bella screamed, but her voice had lost all credibility. "The footage is too blurry to identify anyone." "Perhaps," I said quietly, "but your sister already confirmed that you gave her the note to pass along. And Mark confirmed he received it from someone in a pink bridesmaid dress. Are you saying Amelia is lying about her own actions?" Bella spun toward her sister, her face twisted with rage. "Don't say another word, Amelia. Not another word." But Amelia was beyond Bella's control now. The 19-year-old stood up straighter, wiping tears from her face. "She's wearing the wrong dress in that video because she changed," Amelia said clearly. "She went to the bridal suite after cocktail hour and put on one of my bridesmaid dresses. She said she wanted to surprise Daniel by dancing in a pink dress like the one she wore on their first date." The final piece clicked into place. Bella had deliberately worn a bridesmaid dress to throw suspicion onto one of the other wedding party members. If Noah had died, the investigation would have focused on a woman in pink, not the bride in white. "She planned everything," Amelia continued, her voice growing stronger. "She told me she'd be wearing my dress later, so when Mark described a woman in pink, I'd be the obvious suspect. She was going to let me take the blame for murdering Noah." The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that the ballroom fell into stunned silence. Bella hadn't just tried to murder a child. She'd planned to frame her own sister for the crime. Daniel had been standing motionless through most of the confrontation, but suddenly he stepped forward, his face white with horror and realization. "You tried to kill my son," he whispered, staring at his new wife as if seeing her for the first time. "At our wedding. You tried to murder Noah at our wedding. Daniel, you have to listen to me," Bella pleaded desperately. "These people have been conspiring against us from the beginning. They've fabricated evidence, taken things out of context, turned everyone against me because they never wanted you to be happy again." But Daniel was looking at her with the eyes of a father who finally understood the threat that had been living in his home, sleeping in his bed, planning his child's death. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been planning to kill him?" How long?" Daniel's voice exploded across the ballroom, years of suppressed fear and guilt finally finding their target. Bella's mouth opened and closed silently. There was no answer she could give that wouldn't damn her further. The security chief stepped forward, speaking into his radio. "We need police units at the Fontainebleau Ballroom immediately. We have a situation involving attempted homicide and conspiracy charges." "No," Bella whispered, backing away from the approaching security officers. "This is my wedding day. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life." "Your happiest day," I said quietly, "was planned around my grandson's death." Two security officers flanked Bella, their hands ready to restrain her if she tried to run. Her white gown, so beautiful an hour earlier, now looked like a costume worn by a performer whose show had been canceled. "Mrs. Martinez," one of the officers said formally, "you need to come with us. The police will want to question you about the allegations that have been made tonight." "This is insane," Bella shrieked as they began escorting her toward the exit. "I'm being railroaded by a vindictive old woman who couldn't accept that her son had found love again." But nobody was listening to her anymore. The guests watched in stunned silence as the bride was led away in disgrace, her white train trailing behind her like a surrender flag. The marriage was over before it had truly begun. The reception became a crime scene. The fairy tale wedding became a cautionary tale about the monsters that hide behind beautiful faces. As the ballroom doors closed behind Bella and her security escort, I looked around at the 200 guests who had witnessed this nightmare unfold. Their faces showed shock, horror, and something else, a kind of awe. They thought they had cornered a helpless old woman. What they got instead was a grandmother's fury and a lifetime of wisdom about how to protect her family. Daniel stood alone at the head table, still wearing his tuxedo, surrounded by the ruins of what was supposed to be his new beginning. His bride was gone. His guests were traumatized. His child was safe. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice breaking, "I almost let her kill him. I almost let her kill Noah." I walked to my son and took his hands in mine. "But you didn't. He's safe. That's what matters now." Around us, guests were beginning to gather their belongings, speaking in hushed, shocked tones about what they'd witnessed. The hotel staff was clearing tables with the efficiency of people who'd seen everything but never anything quite like this. 6 months later, As I watched Noah laugh while Chloe pushed him on the swing in our backyard, I realized that Bella's evil plan had given us the greatest gift of all. It showed us who our real family was. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees, casting dancing shadows across the grass where Noah played with his collection of toy cars. His laughter rang pure and joyful, a sound I thought we might never hear again after that terrible night at the Fontainebleau. "Higher, Chloe," he called out, his small hands gripping the swing's chains. "I want to touch the clouds, my daughter." And yes, I'd always thought of Chloe as my daughter, but now the whole world knew it. Laughed as she gave him another gentle push. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, and her face glowed with the kind of contentment that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong. The first few weeks after the wedding had been the darkest our family had ever faced. Darker even than when we lost Sophie, because then we'd grieve together. After Bella's arrest, we'd had to heal from betrayal while Daniel retreated into a shell of guilt and self-recrimination. "I almost let her kill him, Mom," he'd said over and over, sitting in my living room with his head in his hands while Noah slept upstairs. I was so blind, so desperate to replace what we'd lost, that I almost handed my son to a monster. Those were the hardest conversations, watching my successful, intelligent son grapple with how completely he'd been manipulated, how Bella had used his love for Noah against him, convincing him that his protective instincts were overreaction, that his son's fear was just normal adjustment anxiety. "You were grieving," I'd told him gently. "Predators look for people who are vulnerable, who want to believe in second chances and new beginnings. She studied you, Daniel. She knew exactly what you needed to hear. But forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, takes time." While Daniel struggled with his guilt, Chloe stepped fully into the role she'd been preparing for without even realizing it. She moved back into my house permanently, taking the guest room next to Noah's so she could be there whenever he woke up from nightmares. And there were many nightmares in those first weeks. "The yellow-haired lady is trying to get me," Noah would sob, and Chloe would hold him until the trembling stopped. "She can't hurt you anymore, sweetheart," she'd whisper into his dark hair. "She's locked away where she can never reach you. And I'm right here. I'll always be right here." Slowly, patiently, with the same devotion she'd shown after Sophie's death, Chloe began healing the wounds that months of psychological abuse had carved into Noah's spirit. She cooked his favorite meals, read him bedtime stories, helped with homework, and sat through countless viewings of his favorite movies without complaint. But more than that, she gave him something precious that Bella had tried to destroy: the absolute security of knowing he was wanted, loved, and safe. "Chloe," Noah said one evening as she tucked him into bed, "are you going to stay with us forever?" "As long as you want me here, sweetheart. I want you here forever and ever. Even when I'm grown up and have my own house, I want you to live next door." She'd laughed, but I could see tears in her eyes. "I think that sounds like a perfect plan." The breakthrough came in March, 3 months after the wedding disaster. I was in my kitchen making dinner when Noah ran in from school, his backpack bouncing against his small frame. "Grandma, guess what happened at school today?" His excitement was infectious, so different from the withdrawn, fearful child he'd become under Bella's influence. "What happened, sweetheart?" "Mrs. Rodriguez asked us to draw pictures of our families for the spring art show. And I drew you and Daddy and Chloe, and when she asked me who everyone was, I said, 'That's my mom, Chloe.'" My heart stopped. "You called Chloe your mom?" Noah nodded vigorously. "It felt right. She takes care of me like a mom. She loves me like a mom. She's been my mom for a long time, hasn't she?" Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, when Daniel came to pick up Noah for their weekly father-son dinner, I told him what had happened. For the first time in months, I saw something other than guilt in my son's eyes. "He called her mom," Daniel repeated quietly. "She's been mothering him for 3 years, Daniel. Even before we lost Sophie, Chloe was part of our family. She's just been waiting for permission to make it official." Daniel looked through the kitchen window where Chloe was helping Noah with his homework at the patio table. The setting sun painted them both in golden light, and they looked like what they were, a mother and son who belonged together. "I've been such a fool," Daniel whispered. "The person Noah needed was right here all along. The person I needed was right here all along." "Love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks," I told him gently. "Sometimes it grows quietly in the background, proving itself through actions instead of words. The proposal happened on a Tuesday in April. Not a grand gesture or public spectacle, but a quiet conversation between two people who'd found their way to each other through loss, healing, and the shared love of a little boy. Daniel found Chloe in the garden where she was teaching Noah to plant tomato seedlings, the same garden where Sophie had once taught him flower names. But instead of pain, there was continuity. Love building on love, family growing through addition rather than replacement. "Chloe," Daniel said quietly, "Noah told me he's been calling you Mom at school." She looked up from the soil, her cheeks flushing pink. "I hope that's okay. I didn't encourage it, but when he said it, it felt right," Daniel finished. "It felt right." Noah looked up from his seedling, dirt smudged on his nose. "Are you and Chloe going to get married like they do in movies?" And Daniel, my sweet son, who'd been so careful with his heart since Sophie's death, smiled for the first time in months. "Would you like that, buddy?" "Yes!" Noah jumped up, forgetting all about his plants. "Then she'd really be my mom forever, right?" "She's already your mom forever," Daniel said, reaching for Chloe's earth-stained hand. "This would just make it official. The wedding, the real wedding, took place in my backyard 2 months later, just family and close friends, with Noah as the best man and ring-bearer. Chloe wore a simple blue dress the color of summer skies, and when she promised to love and protect Noah as her own son, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. But the most beautiful moment came during the reception, when Noah tugged on Chloe's dress. "Mom," he said, the word rolling off his tongue like he'd been saying it his whole life, "can we dance?" As I watched my daughter, legally now, finally, dance with the little boy she'd helped raise, I understood something profound about family and love and the way broken things can be made stronger when they heal. Bella had tried to destroy us by removing Noah from our lives. Instead, her evil plan had forced us to see what was already there. A family held together not by blood or law, but by choice, sacrifice, and unconditional love. We thought our story ended with justice served and love triumphant. But sometimes, the people who hurt us most aren't done with their revenge. The call I received last week proved that some betrayals run deeper than we ever imagined, and Bella's reach extended further than any of us suspected. But that's a story for another day. Subscribe to our channel, because the next story might just save someone you love. And remember, never underestimate the power of a grandmother's love or the strength that comes from family forged in the fires of betrayal and tempered by truth.